All right. All right. I'll go ahead and start just to make sure that we honor everybody's time. Thanks so much for being here. This is, this is October. The FAFSA application is open. So for any of you who have not filled out the application yet, I highly recommend doing it during this month. I always recommend like trying to get it done before the end of October. And it's really nice to be able to check that off of your list because it can feel, you hear so much hype about it. But I think that's kind of reasonable when we're talking about federal aid, free money for schools. So, go ahead and fill it out if you have not already. If you feel like you are having a hard time prioritizing that because life is just busy sometimes, and it can be really hard for us to align our schedules with what's going on with our seniors. We have this FAFSA night that is tomorrow night. It's at school. I will be there. Maggie Reeves will be there. And we're there basically to open up our space for you all to be able to use, the big screen iMac computers that are really helpful to use when you're filling out like a longer application or something that you feel like you really need to focus on, and your phone screen is a little too small. Maybe an iPad screen feels a little small. So we're there to kind of walk you through that as much as we possibly can. Again, it's tomorrow night, Wednesday night at school from 5:30 to 6:30. And we ask everyone just to enter through the 4th floor entrance. So that means you would park in the garage, come through the main atrium, smell the French fries, but then make your way up to our school space to focus on getting this task done, filling out the FAFSA. You'll want to make sure that you bring all of your documents with you, your required documents, mainly being that 2021 tax return, but also, any other financial documents that are relevant to filling out the form. And I can send you information about what those are. If you're not sure what they are, you can send me an email or I can send it out. Just really quickly, and because I know that some of you may have filled out the FAFSA, some of you may have not. I'm still just going to run through this, but like in an abbreviated version, just so that you have all of the information that you need. And I know you can see my whole screen, but I want it that way so that way you'll be able to see the Common App when I switch over to that later. So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This will be, like I said, you'll use your 2021 tax return. So they basically want to know your financials from the year before, from when you filed. You will want to make sure that like you set that intention of like where you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. And that's why, of course, I recommend coming to school if making it a priority is a struggle. I know that it is in my house. I was able to do it over the fall break, but we still have a couple of things that are undone that we need to finish in the application because of that, because like making sure everybody aligns is, like it's tricky with lots of people involved. So your student is going to have their own FSA ID and you are going to have your own FSA ID. I highly recommend adding that information somehow, like in the notes in your phone. These are some suggestions on the screen. You can create a contact in your phone with your FSA ID and your password, or you can send it to your email address. That way, if any devices are ever misplaced, you have that in your email. You'll definitely want to use your personal email address for your FSA ID because crosstown graduates do keep their crosstown email address for some time after they graduate, for a few years. But your FSA ID could be something that outlasts a few years. We're all about some lifelong learning, and we want you to have as much federal aid as possible. So again, use your personal email address when you are setting up your FSA ID parents, and then students know to do this. And your students have heard all of this many, many times. They probably are ready to be done with me and all of this, but we'll get there. Okay, so when you log in, you get these questions about your citizenship status, your marital status, selective service, and then the education level of parents. And selective service, of course, is for our students who were assigned the male gender at birth, and really truly the penalty for them not signing up for selective service, aka the draft, is that in the state of Tennessee, they would be basically foregoing their state funding for education, being the Hope Scholarship, the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. I always encourage our students to do the research on the history of selective service, why it exists, what the likelihood is of them being called upon to serve their country. But I can't, because there are a lot of unknowns there, well, at least on my end, but I do know that that is the deal when it comes to them graduating from high school in the state of Tennessee and the requirements that for the funding. So also, like I said, it's going to ask about education level of parents. One thing, if you have not filled out the FAFSA yet, one thing that I found a little bit confusing was that at the beginning of the FAFSA, the form said, from here on out, we're going to be referring to your student. However, we will use these pronouns of addressing you and your. And so it was a little bit confusing for me once I got to like the third page, because I thought that when it was asking questions, it was asking them of me, when truly it was asking them as though I were my child. So I encourage you to really take your time with this form. If you have a partner, you and your partner can be like a couple of buddies to say like, hey, pay attention, like this is not what you thought it was. But again, Maggie and I will be available tomorrow night at school to be helpful with that process. There's the next section, or still in section 1 for student information. The section asks students to enter in student codes for certain schools, or I'm sorry, not student codes, but school codes for certain schools that they would like to send their financial information to, schools that they know that they'd like to apply to. Okay, so, before filling out the FAFSA, in all of my FAFSA training, I was told, you got to have those codes ready. You got to have, do your research in advance and have the codes. Well, then once I got into FAFSA, of course, you can just search by school. You can search by state. It's all available there. They will generate the information. So it's not as difficult and tedious as I once thought. So if you want to send your financial information to more than 10 schools, the FAFSA wants you to go ahead and submit just 10. And then once they process your application, you can log back in and send financial information to more schools. But you do have to wait until they process that first round, those first 10, before you can send your financial information to more colleges. So that's one thing to know. And then, sometimes students will wonder, like, do I really have to have my parents involved in this for whatever reason? Maybe they feel like they're really independent and they just want to do this on their own. Or maybe truly, like, the family situation is that the parent is not in the picture. For those special circumstances, we have all different types of solutions and tools, and I encourage students to come and talk to me when that happens, because I've done some FAFSA training on identifying, what to fill out and where. But you see on the screen, it says that if you can check any of these boxes, you don't have to provide parent information. But if you're not able, if your child is not able to check any of those boxes, then yes, you do need to be on there. There does need to be a parent on there. The next section is parent information, and it's who's considered my parent. We have a lot of families in life and in the world where there are different guardians and often grandparents are involved. If you, and then sometimes like in my own house, we don't have like biological mom and dad, there's a step parent, and trying to figure out, who exactly is the parent. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer those. But you will need the parent's social security number and date of birth once you determine who those individuals are. And then of course the 2021 tax return. And that can feel like filling out this form, I think for some families can feel, I don't know, like a little nosy and invasive, but like when we really think about it, like this is the federal government, they have your information already, from paying taxes. So it's really not any different from anything that we're already doing and that you're already doing. And even for parents who maybe are not citizens, like there are totally steps that we take within the form that that work out completely fine and allow students to receive aid. Yeah, so like I said, I always encourage students to come and talk to me because there are like really little details that I know about, enter all the zeros here, and this is how this works from doing my FAFSA training. So again, come talk to me if you've got any of those. And then this is when it kind of gets like that tricky part about like getting mixed up between myself and my child when I was filling it out as a parent. Did the student file a tax return? Do they have untaxed income? And then of course, like you can review it and submit it. One of the things that's a little bit confusing is that you create your FSA ID and then the website will say, well, it takes 3 days to verify it. And like, that's fine, but that doesn't mean you can't fill out the FAFSA without a verification. You can actually still fill it out. So once you create your ID, you can fill this form out, review and submit it. I electronically signed as a parent. Everett, my child, electronically signed, which was funny because they're the one that hasn't created their FSA ID yet. And the really great thing is that, fall break feels like 3 years ago to me, even though it was last week. But the really great thing is that when I got home today from school, there is a lovely little letter from Federal Student Aid reminding us, hey, you still have to sign that. And I'm really glad that they sent that because that helps us to remember like, oh yeah, Everett's got to go back and sign that form. And so they're pretty good about communicating as far as like, if there's a problem, clearly, they don't have Everett's signature yet. So they're like, you need to do that. And I really appreciate that because there's, none of us really like sending something out into the ether and not hearing back and wondering if we did something wrong. And here we are needing this signature and so that they can process the application. And so once that application is processed, the student aid report is generated. And this is the kind of weird part is that they come up with basically a score and your expected family contribution is the name of the score. And they're actually talking about changing the name of it because it's just not an accurate name for what it is. It's basically a score, and they use that score and calculate, based on the prices of the different schools that your child is sending their information to. They basically use a formula to be able to determine what you would be asked to pay from the school, or pay for the school, I'm sorry. But oftentimes, again, I always talk about how once your student applies, lots of colleges will send the acceptance letter and then also, probably an automatic scholarship offer based on merit or based on just the fact that they might have written a killer essay for their Common App. It varies, but this is the part that can feel a little bit risky, a little bit like the gamble. But again, like they will process it. You'll get this student aid report. And this is the part that where you just kind of wait because we're still in the application window, right? So we haven't necessarily received the acceptance letter because maybe the application hasn't gone out, but we're getting there. We will get there. Okay, just to like finish up FAFSA real quick, the questions that come up, all of these questions are totally reasonable and normal, and we're going to figure it out because we've got tools to figure that out. Like I said, I've done this FAFSA training, and for all of those like tricky circumstances that can come up, yeah, just I encourage families to reach out if you're just unsure of any part of it. Okay, so moving on. I just want to remind everybody that we ask all of our seniors, every single one of them, regardless of what their plans are, to fill out a very short application for the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. This is a scholarship offered by the state of Tennessee to all graduates. It is 2 free years at eligible institutions. Students attend a mandatory meeting, and I believe that on December 5th, the Tennessee Promise organization is coming to Crosstown High to talk to all of our seniors and hold their mandatory meeting, but really to like familiarize them with what the scholarship entails. They participate in a mentorship program and then, you know, knock out 8 hours of community service prior to that school term. So the deadline for the Tennessee Promise is November 1st. If your child has not filled it out, you'll probably get an email from me, and I'll be really sweet and tell you that it's time to take, you know, literally like 6-7 minutes to fill out this really short application. It is easy peasy, but like a lot of things, making it a priority and carving out the time and sitting down and doing it is the bigger challenge more than anything else. And oftentimes there are students who feel like, this is not what I'm doing. This is not my plan. Tennessee Promise is not my plan. This feels like a waste. Why are you making me do this? And you know, I feel like it's really important at this point, coming up on this big transition to out of high school, to create as many choices as possible. And this creates another choice that's really great. It might not be a student's very first choice right now, but their classmate, this might be the thing that they are looking the most forward to. So it's different for everyone, just like our pathways and our strategies. But that's the reason why I ask all students to do it, is that we are looking to create all different kinds of paths. And then that way, when life with a capital L happens, we have, you know, we've got different choices. That's what we want, our choices. So like I said, it's not painful. It's very quick of an application. I mean, okay, so I'm kind of jumping away from FAFSA and financial things to talk a little bit about supplemental essays. And so these are essays that can kind of like sneak up on our seniors if they haven't done the research. And so I'm pulling up on the screen, this is my cute little practice account, like it says at the top of the Common App page. So students will, you know, have their Common App open, and you can see that there are different colleges in their list. This section here of Common App is like, I always tell students, I'm like, this is the meat of this meal. This is the place, this is the thing that all of these schools have in common, is this whole section, right? So we've got the family and education, testing, activities, and writing. So in writing down here, this is where students will eventually add in their essay for their college applications. And so they'll add it in right here, right? And they'll be really comfortable with what they've written. Maybe they've been working on their Common App and they've got check marks, which I don't have yet on this whole thing, but check marks all throughout here to say like, I'm finishing up these sections, I've done all of this. And they'll think, oh my gosh, I'm so close. I think I'm almost done. I'm ready to submit. But once they get over to this tab over here with my colleges, I tell students, like, this is the area of the application where colleges can customize what they want on their hamburger, right? If like the Common App is the burger, this is where they can say, I'd like extra mayo and no onions. So for example, like Warren Wilson College, all of these colleges will have these 3 sections, right? They'll have questions, recommenders, and FERPA, and then they'll have this review and submit the Common App section. So that is the same. But when you get into this questions section, for each college in this list, those questions are all going to be different. There might be some overlap, but some colleges will ask you to upload a resume. Some colleges will ask you what activities you would like to participate in if you were there. I think Rhodes College, I know they offer badminton. That one's on the list in there, but they're all very different here. And along with that, sometimes there's a sneaky little supplemental essay. So here I'll scroll down in Warren Wilson all the way to writing. And we've got this essay that turns out in italics. This essay is a critical part of your application review. Please take time to write a thoughtful response. So we see here that like the minimum is 100 words, maximum is 800 words. So, you know, like this is something to spend some time on, especially when your senior is graduating from such a unique learning environment. And you know, depending on the questions that the supplemental essays ask, that may be something to jump into. Like and I would say in particular for Warren Wilson, that would be the case. So if your senior is using Common App, I know many of them are, I encourage you, you know, to ask them to show you this section with all of the different colleges listed to the left. It's the My Colleges section, because that way you can, you know, click on each college and see, well, what kind of questions are they asking? Are we being like really thorough? Because this is kind of where the things that could take a little longer than you think are hiding. And like I said, there are some colleges that will ask for a resume and then some that don't at all. So it's important to make sure that you all are checking that section along with, you know, the being thorough in this Common App, because oftentimes students can think, oh, I don't need to mess with that, but they really do want to go through it and be thorough. So again, I just wanted to show you guys that. And then, okay, so one question that has come up, quite often, especially at this time of year. And for some students, I've worked through this with them. There's some this week that I'm still working with too. A lot of parents and students both are like, you know, curious about like, why are we using Naviance and Common App? And I was actually talking with a student about it today, because there are all of these essential documents that you see on the screen, the recommendations, transcripts, our profile, our school reports, and counselor recommendations. So all of those documents are sent to all of the colleges, right? And, you know, without a software platform like Naviance, we don't really have a way to have any kind of management system for those documents. Common App has some options for students to request letters of recommendation and request a couple, you know, like maybe one of these other documents, but there's no way to manage it really truly outside of Common App for schools, which is why Naviance exists, at least for seniors. And so that way we can be able to go down a checklist with them and say, okay, here are the things that our school is responsible for sending, and here are the things that you're responsible for. And really the thing that your student is responsible for is their application. Like I said, we take care of the transcripts, everything that's here on this list. And I highly recommend when seniors are getting ready to send in their applications, I highly recommend that they come and meet with me beforehand, just so that we can make sure that all of the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. And I always say, like, we're trying to tie a pretty little ribbon on your application and all of your information so that it all arrives in a timely manner and there's nothing that's missing. Because I know that sometimes students will say, oh my gosh, they didn't get my transcript. And it's like, well, you know, we didn't talk about it. Like, we have to communicate about it. It doesn't just automatically send. So especially for students who are applying early, the deadline for submission for most schools is November 1st. I recommend checking with your seniors who are here, triple check your colleges admissions websites, so that way you know for sure that you are not missing any deadlines and you know the target to hit. Like I said on here, I highly recommend meeting before you submit, because that way you can feel that sense of relief that you have done your part, you have been thorough, you have leaned in for support where you need it, and that there are no details that are, left undone. And I will make sure that all the school reports, all of the transcripts, all of those documents send in a timely manner. I was talking with a student about that today, about how as we get closer to Halloween, usually like around the weekend of Halloween and the following days, like I live in Naviance and just scan all of the different checklists to make sure that anyone who is applying early has all of their essential documents sent and that they've been downloaded. So, oh, and that's one more thing I'll add to is that after your student sends their application in, whether it's early or regular decision, whenever they do, using Common App, they'll get a notification that their application has been downloaded by the college. And so that's a satisfying feeling too, just to know that, like I said, you send things out into the ether and you wonder, like, where did it go? Well, there's the confirmation that it's actually there. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want to answer any questions that you have, because this whole process, especially like coming down this home stretch and like having all of these extra little steps to do, is really complicated. It really is. And I applaud all of our students for their patience and their willingness to, like, stick with it and walk this path. But parents, if you have questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself or perhaps put it in the chat, whatever is easy for you and most comfortable, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Leah, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Cece Palazola.
Yeah.
So I'm still a little bit confused about Naviance and the Common App talking to each other. And how that, could you just elaborate a little bit more on that process and how that works and what the steps are for the student? Right.
Okay. So the steps for basically matching them up are that, so every student has, in fact, I can show it to you. Every student has in their list of my colleges in Common App, right? They have this section called Recommenders and FERPA. And this is kind of like, this is the first stop in that process of matching the accounts. And the reason why is because of this waiver right here. I joke about the FERPA, but it's actually serious. And I tell the students, it would be irresponsible of me as an adult to ask you to sign something that you didn't know what it is. And so we talk a little bit about the history of privacy in our country and how, as it turns out, our technology has given the Privacy Act a run for its money. And so we have this waiver called FERPA that allows our school to send their documents electronically without violating their privacy. Now, they do reach a point in that a waiver when they're signing it where it says that I think it says that I waive my right to view all documents, including my transcripts, including my letters of recommendation. And that's when all of them get big eyes and go, what? I wanted to read my letters of recommendation. And so to that, I remind them that, we are a relationship-based school, and our teachers feel comfortable sharing those, sharing those letters with students. It is their right to definitely, not show them the letter. However, that hasn't happened. We are pretty transparent and open about those things. And so students do sign the FERPA. It feels a lot like Apple agreements and Google agreements that we make, in that it's necessary, and they are waiving that right. However, thus far, all letters have been received by students. So waiver is signed, right? They've got that waiver signed. And then what they do is that means that basically they've said, yes, it's okay to send these documents. Then they would hop over to Naviance, and I can put it on the screen. Actually, I'm not sure if it might kick me out as it's logged in. Yep, it did. So I'll use my own child as an example. It basically, what it does is we would hop over to Naviance, and we would be able to, like Aza would log in and then be able to go to the colleges section, colleges that Aza is applying to. And this is basically looking at it from Everett's perspective. So we would go to colleges, and then here are colleges I'm applying to. And right now, Everett's is already matched, but were it not matched, there's a big pink bar across the screen, and then in big letters, the word match. We would hit that match, and then it kicks them back over to Common App and says, log in. Is it okay with you if we match it? And you say yes. And then Common App kicks them back over to Naviance, and they're good, and it's done. And from that point, it's pretty wonderful in that it makes it so that we can manage all of their documents, which I'll show you here for Everett. Once documents are uploaded, like recommendations and the transcripts and such, then we can view them all here. So like we can see that there are recommendations here, 2 more to upload, for teachers to upload. And then we can also go through a whole checklist of all of the documents that we will send. So the nice thing about matching them is that Aza's colleges, all of the colleges that are in her Common App, automatically move over to Naviance. And then we can manage all of the documents that are sent throughout the year. You can see here on the left, it says, there are initial documents that go, and then in the middle, mid-year documents, and then of course the teacher documents and final ones. These are all what our school is going to send to your students' colleges. And the one that ends up being like the most important for these colleges is this final transcript and the final Common App report that confirms that our children were not at the casinos for the semester, that they were actually in school, and that they finished out the year. So I hope that that's helpful, Cecilia. I know that so much of this is very abstract, and I want to try to make it as easy as possible. So I hope that that's helpful, and I'm hopeful that Aza will stop in this week and talk with me a little bit so we can go through those steps together.
Thank you so much. Yes, very helpful. Yeah. And I just was having a hard time getting my mind around how that worked.
Oh, I know. It's really this whole process. I'm telling you, any of you parents who might be confused or feel overwhelmed, or your student feels overwhelmed, I hear you and I see you, and I know it. And it is, I'll just tell you, like I wrote a parent an email today just saying, like, there's gotta be a better way. Like, there's gotta be a better way. I know there is, but nobody's asked me for feedback yet. I kind of wish they would, but I might give them an earful. Kelly, I see your message, and I'll make sure that that I follow up with you for sure. Any more questions? All right. Parents, please feel free to email me. I'm about a day behind on my email, even though I'm inviting you to do that. I'm about a day behind. But I encourage you to, ask your seniors, like, show me your Common App. I've heard so much about it. How's it looking? And then you can kind of get a glimpse of what's going on in there. I know that some students who are applying early are finishing up essays. I know that some are getting started. If they're not applying early, either way is fine. We're all in it. We're all going to see it through together. So again, please feel free to ask questions in emails, reach out to me. I thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for your time, and what your kids are doing great. Yeah, stick with this. We're getting closer and closer. And again, reach out if you need help. I hope y'all have a great, oh, I see your message, CJ. I will make sure that it happens. And I'll also make sure that this video is available in Parent Square when if anybody needs to watch. All right, I hope y'all have a great evening, and I'll see you soon.